like that. While you're standing, look over here at all these wonderful young people who are not on their phones right now. They're standing up, looking at each other in the face, looking at you all. Give them a big round of applause for getting up so early. Thank you for being here in matching clothes. I can assure you that none of them are Wesleyan students. I don't have the authority to get Wesleyan students to get up in the morning, get dressed so well, and even with a tantalizing breakfast that we could offer. But I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Larry, for asking me to come and speak to this distinguished group. Lots of my friends up here at the head table. And even in the cheap seats, lots of people we've worked with over the years. Thank you for being here. I spoke to the chamber when I first started, which was 2007. It's a long time ago. Those of you who remember 2007, I'm sorry that you do, because that was right before 2008, one of the worst economic times in the history of the country, a time when the chamber had to really pull together, when people had to find new ways of keeping their businesses afloat. And so I tell you to watch Wesleyan as a leading indicator of economic change across the country. I say that because I took my last job in 2000 in San Francisco. When I signed my contract in May, people said to me, "Roth, this is going to be the easiest job you ever had. The money is falling off the trees. To do fundraising, you just got a basket and walked around San Francisco, and the money fell into your basket." In August, people said, "Roth, you're lucky to be here in San Francisco," August of 2000, because there's no traffic anymore on the bridge because everyone's unemployed. So I started in 2007 at Wesleyan. In 2008, I don't want to go into it. So I expect to sign a new contract next year for several years, which should bode well for the economy. But if, in fact, the Board of Trustees, in its limited wisdom, asks me to go on to my next job, I think it's a good time to start saving and shorting the market. I get asked a lot of questions. Sometimes they ask me, "Why are you so funny, Roth?" No, really. I get asked a lot of questions as president of Wesleyan University. For a long time, the most frequently asked question is, "Why does it cost so darn much?" And then I find something else to talk about, like financial aid, like the great quality of the education. I get asked a lot about the value of a liberal arts education. I get asked a lot about the behavior of our students. I get asked a lot about, how did you turn the football team around? How did you win the first basketball championship in the conference in anyone's memory? And I love to talk about those things at length. My colleagues here can do it better. But these days, I'm asked a question at every large gathering I attend. And I have to tell you that my answer is disappointing. I cannot get you tickets to Hamilton on Broadway. I talk to prospective college students a lot about what I think they should get from a college education. And I do think that whatever college you go to, whether it's Wesleyan or UConn or one of the Connecticut State campuses, whether it's Middlesex Community College, whatever college you go to, you should get three things from your college education. First thing you should do is to discover what you really love to do. You should find out what it is that gives you meaning in the day, what it is that makes you want to get up in the morning, what it is that makes you feel more alive through your education. Lots of people who wind up at a place like Wesleyan know how to get good grades. It's harder than ever to get in. This year we had over 12,000 applications. Williams and Amherst have about 8,000 applications. So 12,000 is a lot for a small place like Wesleyan. So it's increasingly difficult to get in. They all know how to get A's. They all know how to take tests. But when I ask our students first year, what do you really love to do in school? They often respond with, oh, I love math because I've done well on my math SAT. I love history because I got a 800 on my achievement test from the College Board. And then I ask, why do you love history? And then they ask me for Hamilton tickets. Or they ask me about the basketball team. Because they haven't really thought yet about what it is they love to do, which may not just be what they've gotten good grades at. The chance in college, for as long as you're there, to actually try things that might be enlivening to you, to try things that might give you meaning, that might make you feel like you can make a difference in the world, that's an opportunity in college that is so precious. Because you all know, when you get into the working world, when you are making your business run, when you're trying to make budget, when you're dealing with personnel issues, it's much harder to say, do I really like this? It's much harder to ask yourself those questions. Am I doing what I'm meant to do, what I want to do, what I love to do? Education is a moment in one's life when you can actually ask that question. When you can discover that you really like working with your hands, that you really want to do something technical, that you really want to study computer science, or that you really like working with people more than you like sitting in a lecture hall. That's true of most people. But the chance to find that out is a precious opportunity, so don't waste it when you go to college. Don't stay in a track that someone else made for you. Find the track that's yours. Find the opportunity that gives you meaning and pleasure. But it's not only important to find out what you love to do. I love to make music, for example. But I've never really gotten very good at it. In college, it's so important that as you decide, as you determine what it is you love to do, that you also figure out how to get better at it. When we have people coming to Wesleyan, they've been told for a long time, you are really good at whatever. You are great. You're wonderful. In fact, that's true of a lot of our college-age students. They've been told how wonderful they are for a long, long time. I don't know who wrote that manual for parents, but they should be punished. I have so many students at Wesleyan, and see them all across the country, who are used to being told how great they are. I actually was meeting with Bill Belichick 2 days ago up in Foxborough. He wanted some advice about the draft. I wanted a scholarship at Wesleyan. And he said to me, he has the same issue with the players, the new players who come to the Patriots. I was so surprised because I don't imagine them in the same league, frankly, as our first-year students. And he said that, someone will say to him, but coach, he got a new pair of gloves. How come I don't have gloves? Or that person has new sneakers. Or my locker's too small. Now, I thought, well, that makes sense. They're very big, these people. I said, no, Roth, it's not about that. It's about just expecting that things are going to come to you. And what they learn at Foxborough and what they learn at Wesleyan, I think this is the first time I've ever used the Patriots analogy with I better be careful, with our students. What they learn is how to get much better what they think they're already good at. Because you're in a different league. You were the star student before, and now you're among all these other star students. It's so important to get better at what you love to do, to fail, to find out you're not nearly as good as you thought you were. My freshman professor at Wesleyan gave me an okay grade on my final paper, but his words are indelibly engraved in my memory. He said, Mr. Roth, you have an awkward, wooden, style. Work on your writing. And I said to myself, but I live in the writing house. I'm already a writer. He said, no, not in relation to other writers. Get better at it. It's not enough that you love to do it. The third thing that should happen in college is that you should learn how to share the work you've gotten better at with other people. It's not enough to love what you do, get better at it, and then go up into the attic and do it, or down into the basement and do it. You have to learn to bring your work to the marketplace. You have to learn how to share it with other people. That's when your work becomes more valuable. That's when your efforts acquire the kind of recognition and the power of sharing that will make your products, the things you do, even more catalytic, even more compelling. Sharing the work that we do at Wesleyan with the greater Middletown community is a vital part of our Wesleyan education. We don't think of Wesleyan University as a separate enclave that's hard to get into, that's divorced from the community. On the contrary, we think that if we're doing a good job at Wesleyan, we ought to test the job we're doing in relationship to the community around us. I published a book a year or so ago called Beyond the University, Why Liberal Education Matters. Why Liberal Education Matters. And the argument of the book is that the American tradition of liberal education, unlike the European tradition of the liberal arts education, is tied to work, is tied to productivity. Liberal education in the United States is pragmatic, but that means you have to actually see if anybody cares about the education you value so much. And in our case, that means partnering with the community. We have a newly named Jewett Center for Community Partnerships, in which 750 students annually engage in programs all through the semester, doing volunteer work like tutoring and mentoring in local schools, addressing issues of housing with Habitat for Humanity, delivering discarded but still good loaves of bread to 3 elementary schools to deal with food insecurity, and much, much more. It means that we have to open our gates to the Middletown community and exchange ideas with our neighbors. We now every year have Middletown Day in conjunction with a home football game where we also can salute our veterans, because Wesleyan started a scholarship program for veterans a few years ago, and in 2 years we'll have 40 veterans on full scholarships as Wesleyan students. But we also want to connect those Wesleyan vets with the veteran community here in the greater Middletown area. Soon we'll be having the next Riverfront Encounter, the Feet to the Fire Riverfront Encounter, where we celebrate creativity along the Connecticut River with our artists and local artists from around the community. We show films now on Forest Hill and the Career Expo you've heard about. One of the great things at Wesleyan is to see all of those young people coming to our campus to figure out what kind of careers might be open to them. I'll give you a few stats about our economic impact. Most recently, in the Economic Impact Report, we were judged to have $434 million in labor income, $624 million in value added to the state economy, supporting almost 7,000 jobs on campus and beyond. Our Freeman Athletic Center is also an emergency shelter. It's now powered by a cogeneration facility so that in an emergency we can create our own power, not just for ourselves, but as an emergency shelter for our community. We work very closely, as many of you know, with the United Way, and I'm proud that Wesleyan is always in the top handful of contributors to the important work that the United Way does in our community. We've been working with Mayor Drew on a number of initiatives to connect the strengths of Middletown with the strengths of Wesleyan to the benefit of all. Today we will be issuing a request for proposals for a space on Main Street to which we can move our bookstore, creating, we hope, an independent bookstore that can be an important retail outlet on Main Street and another way of connecting our students and our faculty with commerce on Main Street. These are tough times in Connecticut. I don't have to tell this crowd. We don't have as many of our reps from Hartford here this morning. They're working very hard, late into the night, trying to figure out how to create an economically sustainable model for state government. We have to figure out how to create an economically sustainable model for our communities, just like we do in our businesses or our families. We have to live within our means. And we also have to protect the most vulnerable. And we also want to create spaces for opportunity. How can you do all of those things? Well, I suggest to you this morning that where people find ways of doing all those things is through a broad, contextual, and conceptual education, a liberal education. When Thomas Jefferson thought about founding the University of Virginia and having an open-ended form of education based in inquiry, the end result wasn't supposed to be philosophical contemplation that you got real smart so you can sit in the sun and think about big ideas. No, that's not the point of an American pragmatic liberal education. The point is, as Jane Addams knew, as W.E.B. Du Bois knew, the point is to create combinations of things that illuminate opportunities that nobody else saw before. I tell my students that the greatest compliment you can get from somebody because of your education is not that you're a leader, is not that you're ultimately original. The greatest compliment you can get from somebody because of your education is, I want you on my team. I want you on my team because you see how to do things nobody else can see. You found an opportunity that nobody else can find. You put things together in a new way, creating value where everybody else just saw an obstacle. If we turn our education system into a narrow shortcut to cheap technical things for the most immediate future, we will become the call center of the world. Other creative, innovative companies will use us to do their work, and when they're done with that technology that they've taught us how to use, they will discard us. That is not the American tradition. The American tradition is for us to create value by seeing possibilities and opportunities that nobody else saw. Where everybody else saw an obstacle, we see a possibility. We are an optimistic people that uses our education to leverage our talent to create value, not just for the few, but for our community as a whole. Whatever kind of education you pursue, my friends over there on my right, whatever kind of education you pursue, I hope you will pursue an education that leads you to be the kind of person that everyone else looks at and says, I want her on my team. I want that guy. Because that's the person who's going to make a difference, who's going to create value, who's going to add something to our community, for herself, for himself, but also for the rest of us. When we do that, we're doing the good old American liberal education. Thank you so much. Have a great day.